Hey guys, in today's video I bring you a shocking and impossible to ignore story. Let's meet Rachel Monroe, a woman who stayed dead for 7 minutes and came back with a bombshell revelation from Jesus about what really happens in heaven when someone remarries while their first spouse is still alive. What she heard from Christ will shake your beliefs and make you question everything you've ever heard about divorce and new beginnings. So leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. And comment below which city you are watching this video from. Let's spread this truth to the whole world. Now get ready. What you will hear could change your life forever. I call myself Rachel Monroe. I have 38 years and I live in Dallas, Texas. I never thought I would die on a Wednesday morning, alone at home, with a glass of juice in my hand, and wake up before the eyes of Jesus hearing the most shocking words anyone could say to me. This is adultery in the eyes of heaven. Yes, I was remarried, and yes, I thought God had given me a new chance. But what he showed me changed everything. That day the sky was clear, the sun was shining through the window, and I was feeling tired, as if I had been awake all night. Little did I know that my heart was about to stop. It all happened very quickly. Dizziness, a strange buzzing, my vision going dark. I still managed to think, Mark, where are you? My second husband, the one who helped me rebuild my life. But he was traveling for work. Alone, I fell to the kitchen floor. My body shuddered. After nothing. But it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I could never have imagined. I found myself out of my body, hovering on the ceiling, looking at myself lying on the floor. But before I could understand what was happening, I was sucked into a deep darkness, which little by little was transformed into an unbearably pure light and wings. He was Jesus. No throne, no golden crown, but with eyes that penetrated my soul. He didn't need to accuse me. I already knew. He showed me scenes from my first marriage, to Daniel, the one I swore to love until death. He showed me the day we exchanged rings as if heaven were present. I was shaking, but I thought, it's been so long. I've suffered so much. God understands. That's when he said, you broke a vow before me and started another, without the first having been undone. But what about the divorce? I babbled or thought. There, words are felt, not spoken. And he replied firmly, man can sign papers, but in heaven, the covenant still lives. It was like my soul was ripped in two. I had been forgiven of so many sins, but that one was still alive. It was still holding me back, and I didn't know. He showed me other women like me, smiling in churches, dressed in white for the second time, saying, God has restored my life, but all with the same secret look, an invisible weight, an unheard prayer, an emptiness that not even her new husband's love could fill. Jesus said, what the world calls a new beginning, I call adultery, if the first pact still lives. And at that moment, I died inside, not out of fear, but for the truth. That was just the first part of what I saw. I don't know how long I stayed there before him. Time in that place doesn't move like it does here. There are no clocks. There is no yesterday or tomorrow, just eternity, wide open before me. And Jesus kept looking at me. But it wasn't a look of human judgment. It was different from anything else. It was as if he was saying, I love you so much that I won't let you live in deception. That phrase, in heaven this is adultery, still burned in my conscience. It sounded like something impossible to accept. But at the same time I knew it was true, more true than anything I was taught. He didn't scream, he didn't raise his voice, but his every word exploded within me like 1,000 thunderclaps of revelation. You remarried, Rachel, and the world applauded. The church fell silent. Your friend said, you deserve to be happy. But I ask you, was it I who told you that? My heart, or what I was in that state, trembled, because I had never really asked God. I prayed, but selective prayers. I prayed waiting for Him to confirm what I already wanted to do. Lord, bless this new love. And when I felt peace, I thought it was approval. But now He showed me. Not all peace comes from me. Sometimes it's just emotional relief, not spiritual obedience. From His side, the whole world seemed fragile, false. The justifications that I carried in my chest for years fell like dry leaves. My first marriage was traumatic. I tried everything. I deserved someone better. He showed scenes of my pain with Daniel, and I cried. I cried like never before. Why? He validated my pain, but it didn't justify my disobedience. And then came the most devastating part of the vision. He took me to a place. It was like a glass room suspended in the void. Inside, several people smiled, sang, prayed. I saw a woman with the Bible open, leading praise, a man in a smart suit, preaching, couples holding hands, praying together. And Jesus said, "These are the ones who live in a new marriage while their first spouse is still alive. They believe they are at peace, but they are in error, and error brings invisible consequences." Dark veil hung over that room, a spiritual silence. They prayed, but it didn't go above the ceiling. They touched the sky with words, but not with obedience. Heaven does not respond to sacrifices that ignore the truth. At that moment, something in me broke. And He continued, "The love I offer does not nullify my word. The truth will never be shaped by what you feel. You must decide whether you will live according to what heaven recognizes or what men allow." And I could only babble inside myself. But what now? I've already rebuilt my life. I already have another home. And I love it. And that was when He showed me something that made my spirit collapse once and for all. Jesus reached out His hand, not to touch me, but as if activating something invisible. And then, a new vision formed before my eyes. I trembled. My spirit knew what would I see now would change everything. It was my first marriage, the day of yes. I saw myself, young with shining eyes, walking down the aisle. Daniel was there, with that nervous smile that only he had. People were on their feet, excited. But at that moment, what surprised me most was who else was present there, God. I saw Him in the Spirit as a judge and as a father. On that altar, heaven was present. And when we said, "Till death do us part," heaven sealed the pact. Jesus then said in a firm voice, "Rachel, you didn't just make vows in front of an audience. You made them in front of me." I was the invisible witness of that day. And that which I bind together, no divorce paper can undo. My heart sank. I wanted to scream. But Lord, I suffered so much. I was left. I was alone. And He responded with words that I will not forget as long as I live, or after I die. Pain does not undo the alliance. Loneliness does not erase the vow. You do not need to continue in suffering, but you need to return to the truth. I saw a string of light coming from my heart to Daniel's. Even though we've been separated for years, the connection still existed in the spiritual world. I tried to look away. I wish I didn't see it, but Jesus stopped me with love. You need to face what many pretend not to see. The pact is not dead, and the new relationship was built on the rubble of a foundation that still stands. The image of my second wedding appeared before me. A beautiful ballroom, friends smiling, my mother crying with joy, Mark saying yes tenderly. But behind the scene, there were invisible cracks, small shadows in the environment, as if something was out of place and even in beauty. Jesus then revealed, "The eye. New marriage may seem stable to human eyes, but in the eyes of heaven, if the previous pact is still in force, the new is an affront, not a new beginning." That's when I saw myself crying in the room, alone. even though I was married to Mark. Those moments of spiritual emptiness. That feeling that something was out of order, even though everything was apparently fine. It was the sky screaming in silence. It's not love that defines right, Rachel. It's my word. At that moment, I felt such a great weight on my spirit that I knelt in his presence, not with the body, but with the soul. My mind screamed, "But what now? What do I do?" And Jesus answered me with something that broke my soul into pieces, but also set me free. You don't need to know all the answers now, but you need to choose. Will you continue living according to culture or according to heaven? And at that moment, I saw something even deeper, something that would completely knock me off my feet. Jesus did not answer my question with theories. He took me to see it. The environment around us suddenly changed. I stopped being in the light and was enveloped by a dense, almost suffocating atmosphere. It wasn't hell, not yet, but it was a place of total awareness, where souls faced the reality of their choices. No more excuses. I didn't walk there. I was carried away, floating, as if the Spirit himself was guiding me. When I arrived, I saw women, lots of them, some in church clothes, others with faces marked by suffering. But they all had in common an empty look, like someone carrying a pain that he was never able to name in life. Jesus said, "These are the ones who left believing they were at peace, but never aligned themselves with the truth." I saw a woman kneeling, hands on her face, saying over and over, "But he left me. I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted someone." She seemed trapped in burning pain, not from punishment, but from late repentance. Another woman screamed silently. No sound came out of his mouth, but his soul exuded despair. She knew Rachel, but she chose to ignore it. Jesus approached, not with condemnation, but with tears in my eyes, real tears. What hurts me most is that they all knew. They felt my spirit warning them, but they preferred comfort to obedience. I saw shepherds there, preachers, influential women. I even saw people who in life were celebrated for restoration, but now they cried for not having confronted the truth. Jesus looked at me and said, "Rachel, the world has created a theology of convenience. They call adultery a fresh start. They call error a cure. They use my grace as a license to live outside the light." And it was at that moment that he pointed at me. "You still have time." These words echoed with force, because what I saw in that place was not punishment, it was absence. Absence of his presence, lack of response, lack of rest. A silent kind of torment, not physical but spiritual. It was like carrying a burden you never wanted to acknowledge in life, and now it was late. Rachel, this is the consequence of a life of justification. It's not the mistake that trapped them here, but the refusal to truly repent. I cried. I squirmed inside. I saw women like me. I saw myself, almost between them. But then the light of Christ enveloped me again, hard, urgently, with love that exudes truth. You are alive, but you live like someone who is blind. Now that you have seen, you will no longer be able to live as before. And then he showed me one last picture, one that would make me tremble inside. Jesus stretched out his hand once more, and before us appeared something that looked like a living canvas, not of cinema, but of the soul. It was as if I were inside a real parable, created just for me. "I want you to see with the eyes of the Spirit what you called happiness," he said. And then I saw my own house, beautiful, decorated with care. I saw Mark, my second husband, smiling as he made coffee, placing flowers on the table as he always did. It was a perfect scene, but as the vision deepened, the environment began to tremble. The walls of the house began to ranger. The ceiling was cracking. The windows creaked. And then Jesus spoke in a low but devastating voice. This is the home you built on a foundation I do not recognize. The words seemed to cut through my soul with the precision of a sword. Next, I saw a spiritual version of my covenant with Mark. It was made of glass, beautiful, delicate, but with a deep crack in the center. The more I tried to hold it, the more it fell apart into pieces that cut my hands. "I love you, Mark," I said in spirit, desperate. And then I saw Daniel, my first husband. He was distant. There was no romance, there was no longing, but there was something not yet finished. A thread of light still connected me to him, a pact not annulled in the spiritual world. And that's when Jesus said something that changed my understanding of everything. The love you feel does not sanctify the mistake you make. If the first pact did not die, the second was not born. At that moment, I went into despair. I wanted to go back. I wanted to repair. I began to cry out with all my strength. "Lord, give me one more chance. Let me go back. Show me how to get out of this. I don't want to be another one in that room of eternal silence." And for the first time since I got there, Jesus smiled. "You just have to want truth more than you want comfort." And then something tremendous happened. A force pulled my spirit violently. I felt like I was falling. A whirlwind of light enveloped me, and the sky became more and more distant. My body, once light, became dense, heavy, painful. And when I opened my eyes, the sound of hospital machines surrounded me. They were reviving me. I heard a nurse shout, "She's back!" Heart rate stabilized. And at that moment, I didn't feel joy. I felt an overwhelming responsibility. I had died for 7 minutes, but I received an eternity of truths. And I knew, if I didn't change everything, he would be mocking heaven itself. When my eyes opened, the first thing I saw was the white ceiling of the hospital. The fluorescent lights blinded me. The air was heavy and my chest burned, not just from resuscitation, but from something much deeper. I was no longer the same. And then I heard his voice. Mark. He was sitting next to me, his eyes red, holding my hand with a strength that almost hurt. "Rachel, my God, you're back. You gave me a horrible scare," he cried. Relief, love, concern, all genuine. But I couldn't answer. I just cried, not out of emotion, of conflict. The image of Jesus' gaze invaded me like silent thunder. His words repeated themselves like a hammer in the soul. The second marriage before me is adultery, if the first covenant still lives. And now, the one that had always been my safe haven became the symbol of the most difficult choice of my life. Mark smiled tenderly. "You're not going to leave me, right? We're going to get out of this together like always." That sentence said with so much love. It cut me like a knife. Because now I knew the love that saves. It is what aligns with the truth. I wanted to scream, "Forgive me, I didn't know. I saw Jesus. I know what he thinks now." But the words stuck in his throat. On the outside, I was waking up to a miracle. Inside, I was sinking into an eternal dilemma. When the doctor came into the room and said that my heart had stopped 7 minutes, Mark put his hands on his head and thanked God out loud. "God saved you. This is a fresh start." But little did he know that the new beginning, it would be painfully different from what he imagined. That night, lying in the hospital bed, with wires connected to my body and pain that wasn't physical, I stared at the ceiling for hours. And I whispered, "Lord, now what? What do you want me to do?" And the answer did not come with an audible voice, but it came with the weight of truth. Now that you've seen it, you won't be able to live like before. The Spirit did not give me a command. He didn't give me orders, but it planted a frightening certainty in me. Continuing in that marriage, they would be denying the light I saw. And it was then that, almost supernaturally, my mind was taken by a verse that I never memorized, but that formed perfectly in my consciousness. Whoever wants to come after me must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Lucas 9:23. And I knew the cross I would have to bear was not the pain of losing someone. It was the pain of choosing the truth over my will. But how to do this? How to look into the eyes of the man who loves me and say that before, God, am I not his? The weight of what was to come kept me awake that night, but I knew my soul was at stake. In the days following my discharge, the physical pain disappeared, but the spiritual pain only increased. It was like walking with an invisible thorn stuck in your soul, throbbing with every gesture, with every forced smile, with every good morning said with your voice, but not with your heart. Mark took me home very carefully. He cooked for me. He gave me blankets. He prayed with me at night. But all this, which previously warmed me, now it hurts me. Not his fault. Mark was good, a man of integrity, kind, a true companion. But odd, he was not my husband before God. That phrase haunted me like an eternal echo. The first night back, I lay next to him with my heart screaming, "Are you going to lie to him? Are you going to pretend like nothing happened?" The vision of other souls tormented me. Those who left with a new love and a heart outside the alliance. I knew too much to continue living as if I knew too little. The next morning I sat alone with my Bible. The sun had barely risen. And by chance, or providence, I turned to Romans 7:2-3. For a married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives. But if she is joined to another man while her husband still lives, she will be called an adulteress. The word adulteress jumped off the page like a stab. It was no longer an ancient text, was my condition before God. And then, for the first time since I got back from the hospital, I prayed with brutal honesty, Lord, if I am to live in truth, even if I lose everything, then give me courage. What happened next was almost immediate. My cell phone vibrated with a message from Mark. Babe, I thought we'd have a special dinner tonight, just the two of us. And I cried. How to tell him that the two of us were in conflict with heaven? That afternoon, I made an appointment with my pastor. I thought he would understand. I entered his room and told him everything. The NDE, the words of Jesus, the vision, the revelation of the first covenant. He looked at me, took a deep breath, and then said, Rachel, God understands the context. Grace covers all of this. The important thing is that you are happy. It was like being punched in the spirit. Happy? This was never about happiness. It was about truth. Heaven didn't show me the price to make me comfortable. Heaven confronted me to set me free. I left the church with an overwhelming emptiness. The people who were supposed to guide me to the light. They delivered me back to the shadows with soft words. I came home, and Mark had a bouquet of flowers. Are you better today, my love? Yes, but we need to talk. He looked at me seriously. Rachel, you saw something while you were there, didn't you? My eyes filled with water. I saw it, and now, nothing can be the same again. And as I said this, something inside me was dying again. But for the first time, it was the death of a lie. Returning to. The body was like being ripped from a place where everything made sense, to fall into a cramped, noisy, and blind world. The first feeling I had was suffocation. Not through the oxygen tube, not through the wires in my chest, but why God's presence had receded. And now I felt the weight of the world without him. During the NDE, everything was clear. The truth passed through me effortlessly. But here, the fog of deception seemed to hang over everything. What haunted me most was not what I saw in the sky. It was what I stopped seeing when I came back. General blindness. Spiritual silence disguised as routine. Artificial peace built on human justifications. I knew too much, and that became a burden. My mind was a whirlwind of images. The gaze of Jesus, firm and compassionate, The vision of women trapped in their illusions, the silent sound of unanswered prayers, the cracked glass ring, and that phrase that echoed vividly throughout my being. If the first pact still lives, the second is not recognized by me. It was like carrying a tattoo on your soul. I could smile, breathe, even laugh, but none of it was complete. Everything seemed fragile. Why the truth, once revealed, cannot be ignored. The spirit did not scream inside me, but he whispered incessantly, "Now you've seen. Now you know. And now, you need to live up to what you've been shown." I noticed that most people who live in a new marriage while their first spouse is still living, he doesn't do it out of pure rebellion, but for not seeing. And when they see, many they prefer to close their eyes again. The difference between me and them now was that my eyes were opened by Jesus, and that carries a price. The truth has a weight that ignorance does not know. But at the same time, a deep peace also inhabited my spirit. Not a comfortable peace, but a clean, firm peace, full of light. As if I had stepped out of a lie that felt like love, into a light that demanded renunciation but offered eternity. Returning to life here was like carrying a seed from heaven in the middle of a desert. I wasn't just Rachel anymore. I was one who had heard the living word say, "This is adultery." And once the truth is revealed, there is no longer any way to live in peace with lies. Since the moment I returned to this world, I have carried a feeling that I cannot explain in human words. It's as if something had been written inside me, as if every cell in my body now carries a single message. You are faced with the truth. It's not an emotional feeling. It is not spiritual excitement and conscience, awareness that I stood before the one who is pure, which is holy, that does not negotiate with human justifications. Awareness that love and true, they are not on opposite sides. In eternity, the two walk together, always. There is no context, there is no special case, there is no, "But I suffered a lot." Before the eyes of Jesus, everything is revealed in its essence. And he showed me the essence of what I lived, disobedience covered by a veil of good intention. It didn't lead to my conviction, it led to my breaks. A break that frees. A holy pain that cleanses. Because God didn't crush me, he woke me up. And waking up hurts. Today, I live with this invisible mark. She doesn't appear in the exams, but it's on me like a seal on the soul. I no longer look at marriage with the same eyes. What was once love in human eyes, now I understand how an indestructible spiritual pact in the eyes of God. And if this pact was not undone by death, then everything that comes after it, even if loaded with affection, is outside the original alliance. During my NDE, I understood that eternity it does not recognize arrangements made only on earth. Heaven records votes. Heaven hears alliances. Heaven respects what was said before God, even if men have forgotten. And when I saw myself before Jesus, I was not condemned by him. I went kindly confronted. The truth did not come in anger. He came with eyes that said, "I love you too much to let you live in deception." Since then, I can no longer live a faith adapted to what is convenient. I can no longer call grace what is actually an escape. I can no longer ignore the voice that told me, "You must live according to what I see, not what others allow." The truth transformed me. It broke me, healed me, and now, what I want most, it's not defending what I built, and honor what God has revealed to me, even if it costs everything. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.